We'll be back in 2 weeks. Just watch the dog, my daughter said. So, I booked myself a 5-star resort instead. The afternoon sun spilled through my kitchen windows as I kneaded bread dough with flour-dusted hands. It was Thursday, my baking day, the one ritual I'd maintained since retirement 3 years ago. The phone rang, and I recognized Emily's ringtone immediately. Daughters by John Mayer. A little inside joke between us that had somehow lost its humor over time. Mom, are you home? Her voice already had that breathless quality that usually preceded a request. Yes, honey. Just making some sourdough. I wedged the phone between my ear and shoulder, continuing to work the dough.
Great. We're actually just around the corner. Be there in 5.
Before I could ask any questions, she hung up. We're around the corner rarely meant a casual visit, I sighed, wiping my hands on my apron and glancing around my modest living room. Not that Emily ever noticed the state of my house anymore. When she was younger, she used to compliment the little changes. A new throw pillow, a rearranged bookshelf. Now her eyes scanned my home like she was mentally cataloging all the ways it had become outdated. Right on cue, the doorbell rang, followed immediately by the sound of a key in the lock. I'd given Emily that key for emergencies 15 years ago, but emergency had gradually expanded to include any minor inconvenience. Mom! Hello! Emily burst in, her designer handbag swinging from the crook of her arm. Behind her, Mark, my son-in-law, struggled with what looked like a large pet carrier and an overstuffed duffel bag. Their faces were glowing with an unmistakable excitement that made my stomach tighten. I knew that look all too well. Max, their 3-year-old golden retriever, bounded in behind them, making a beeline for me. Unlike his owners, Max's affection seemed genuine, pressing his wet nose into my hand and wagging his tail so hard his entire body swayed. Hello, sweetie, I said, kneeling to scratch behind his ears, secretly more pleased to see the dog than my daughter at that moment. And hello to you two as well, I added, looking up at Emily and Mark, who were exchanging those conspiratorial glances. Couples develop when they're about to ask for something substantial. Mom, you look great, Emily said, giving me a quick one-armed hug that barely made contact, her perfume leaving a cloud that lingered longer than her embrace. Is that a new haircut? It wasn't. I'd had the same bob for nearly a decade. Same old me, I replied, rising to my feet with a small grunt that I tried to disguise as a chuckle. At 63, my knees weren't what they used to be. What brings you both by? And with Max too. Mark set down the pet carrier with obvious relief. Great to see you, Diane, he said with that charming smile that had once impressed me, but now struck me as practiced. He never called me mom like other sons-in-law did. Always Diane, like we were colleagues rather than family. We have the biggest favor to ask, Emily began, already moving toward my kitchen as if magnetized by the smell of baking bread. She ran her finger along my countertop in a way that made me wonder if she was checking for dust. Is that sourdough? You always make the best bread. I followed her, noting how she hadn't actually asked if she could have any. Yes, it'll be ready this evening. Now what's this favor? Emily reached for an apple from my fruit bowl, polishing it against her sleeve before taking a bite. So, you know how Mark's been working so hard on that big client account? I didn't know, actually. Our calls had become increasingly infrequent, and when we did speak, Emily rarely mentioned specifics about their lives, unless it was to highlight a purchase or achievement. The Westmore project, Mark chimed in from the living room, where he was now scrolling through his phone, barely engaged in the conversation. Right, the Westmore project, Emily continued, as if I should have immediately recognized the name. Well, it finally closed last week, and we've been so stressed lately with that and some other things. I noticed she was twisting her wedding ring, a tell she'd had since childhood whenever she was working up to something big. What things? I asked, genuinely curious about what was happening in my daughter's life. She waved her hand dismissively. Oh, you know, just life stuff. Anyway, we were wondering if you could watch Max for us. Just for 2 weeks. There it was. The favor dropped into conversation like it was nothing, like watching someone's energetic dog for 14 days wasn't a significant commitment for someone my age, living alone. Max was a sweetheart, but he required long walks and constant attention. 2 weeks? I repeated, measuring my tone carefully to hide my initial reaction. That's quite a while, Emily. Where are you going for so long? Emily and Mark exchanged another one of those looks. The kind that made me feel like I was interrupting something private, despite standing in my own kitchen. We just need a little getaway, she said vaguely. You know how it is? Work-life balance and all that. I did know how it was. I'd raised Emily as a single mother after her father left when she was just 7. For 20 years, I worked as an administrative assistant at the same accounting firm, taking on extra shifts during tax season to afford dance lessons and later college application fees. Work-life balance had been a luxury I couldn't afford until retirement. When were you thinking? I asked, already knowing I would say yes because I always did. Because the alternative was being the difficult mother, the one who made her daughter feel guilty, the one who wasn't supportive enough.
Well, Emily glanced at her watch.
An elegant timepiece that probably cost more than my monthly pension. Actually, we're leaving tomorrow morning. Early flight. My hands stilled in the bread dough. Tomorrow? Emily, that doesn't give me much time to prepare. Mark finally looked up from his phone. We brought everything Max needs, he said, gesturing toward the duffel bag by the door. Food, toys, his bed, it's all there. And his medication schedule is on a note in the bag, Emily added quickly. It's just for his seasonal allergies, nothing major. I hadn't even known Max was on medication. I see, I said, feeling that familiar tightness in my chest, the one that appeared whenever I was about to accommodate someone else's needs at the expense of my own. Well, I suppose. Oh, Mom, thank you. Emily interrupted, her face brightening as if I'd already agreed. You're the best. We knew we could count on you. She hugged me again, this one slightly longer but still perfunctory, careful not to press against my flour-covered apron. We really appreciate it, Diane, Mark added, finally putting his phone away. It's been a hell of a year. I wanted to ask for details. What had made their year so difficult? Was everything okay in their marriage? How was Emily's job at the marketing firm going? But before I could form the questions, Emily was already moving toward the door. Max's leash is in the side pocket of the bag, she said. He needs at least 2 walks a day, and he loves playing fetch in the evenings. I know, I said, a little more sharply than intended. This isn't the first time I've watched him, though it was certainly the longest. Either Emily didn't notice my tone, or chose to ignore it. Perfect. Oh, and he's been having these little anxiety episodes at night lately. Nothing serious. He just whimpers a bit. If you let him sleep in your room, he's fine. I thought about my quiet evenings reading in bed, my peaceful mornings with coffee and crosswords. All of that would be temporarily on hold. We should get going, Mark said, checking his watch now. We've still got packing to finish. Emily nodded, already stepping outside. We'll be back in 2 weeks. Just watch the dog, she said, with that sweet but rushed smile I'd grown accustomed to. Max will be good company for you. You're always saying how quiet the house is. I had said that once during a particularly lonely stretch after my sister moved across the country. I hadn't meant it as an invitation to become a pet sitter. Yes, of course, I said, because what else could I say? I didn't want to be the difficult mom. I didn't want to disappoint her. I didn't want to be alone with the knowledge that I was more useful to my daughter as a service than as a person. Emily hugged me one last time. This one feeling like she was doing me the favor rather than the other way around. You're the best, Mom. Really. Then they were gone, speeding off in their shiny SUV, leaving me standing in my doorway with flour-dusted hands and a golden retriever looking up at me expectantly. Max whined softly, nudging my leg with his nose. It's just you and me now, buddy, I said, kneeling down again to stroke his soft head. Don't worry, I know what it's like to be left behind. I closed the door, looked at the pet supplies dumped unceremoniously in my entryway, and felt the familiar weight of being taken for granted settle back onto my shoulders. With a deep breath, I turned back to my kitchen. The bread dough wouldn't knead itself, and now I had a dog to settle in. Another phone call, another favor, another 2 weeks of my life rearranged for someone else's convenience. Just like always. But something felt different this time. A small, hard knot forming somewhere deep in my chest. I ignored it as I returned to my baking, pressing my palms into the dough with perhaps a bit more force than necessary. After Emily and Mark left, I spent the evening getting Max settled. Despite my initial frustration, his gentle presence was somewhat comforting, as we established a makeshift routine together. I baked my bread, fed him dinner from the premium kibble they'd packed, and took him for a short walk around the neighborhood. When we returned home, exhausted but satisfied, I decided to unpack Max's duffel bag properly. Emily had always been haphazard about organization, something I tried and failed to instill in her throughout her childhood. Sure enough, the bag was a jumble of dog toys, medications, and loose treats that had spilled into every crevice. I emptied everything onto my living room floor, creating neat piles, toys in one stack, medications with their entrins in another, treats in a container. Max watched with interest, occasionally nudging a rubber bone or squeaky toy with his nose as if to claim it. That's when I found it. Tucked between Max's fleece blanket and a chew toy was a folded piece of paper. I almost tossed it into the recycling bin, assuming it was just packing material or an old receipt. But something, curiosity, intuition, or perhaps years of motherly suspicion, made me unfold it. The paper was high quality, heavy stock with an embossed golden palm tree logo at the top. Oceana Palms, it read in elegant script, 5-star beachfront spa and suites. Below the resort name was a detailed itinerary for a 2-week stay, beginning tomorrow. I stared at it, my hands suddenly cold despite the warm evening. Oceana Palms, the exclusive resort I'd been saving travel reward points for ever since I retired. The place I'd mentioned to Emily during one of our rare heart-to-heart talks last Christmas. When she'd asked what I was planning to do with my golden years, I'd told her about my travel club account, how I'd been diligently accumulating points for nearly a decade, dreaming of one perfect, luxurious vacation after a lifetime of budget motels and camping trips. Couples Ocean View Suite, the itinerary specified. Daily breakfast buffet included. Complimentary welcome package with champagne and local delicacies. My throat tightened. How could Emily afford this? She and Mark lived well, but Oceana Palms was beyond even their means. A week there cost more than I made in a month when I was working. Unless I reached for my laptop with trembling hands, Max sensing my distress and coming to rest his head on my knee. I navigated to my travel rewards account, a site I hadn't checked in months. I'd accumulated nearly 200,000 points over the years, enough for the dream vacation I'd planned to take for my 65th birthday in 2 years. When the login page appeared, I tried my usual password. Incorrect. I tried again, adding a capital letter, still wrong. After the third failed attempt, I paused, a suspicion forming. I'd shared my login information with Emily once, about a year ago. She'd called in a panic, needing to book a last-minute flight for a work emergency but maxed out on her credit cards. I'd offered my account, which had a small points balance then that could cover her economy ticket. She'd promised to pay me back, though she never had. Had she changed my password? I tried her birthday. Nothing. Mark's birthday. Nothing. Then, with a sinking feeling, I tried Max the Dog 1, the password Emily used for most of her accounts, despite my warnings about security. The screen refreshed, and my account opened. Balance 3,004. I stared in disbelief. Nearly 200,000 points. Gone. My finger hovered over the recent activity tab, though I already knew what I would find. With a deep breath, I clicked. 2 weeks at Oceana Palms. 5,000 points. Booked 3 months ago. Couples massage package. 5,000 points. Wine country tour. 6,500 points. All booked under Diane Walker, my name, but with Emily's email for confirmation. My hand went to my chest, where that small, hard knot from earlier had grown into something larger and sharper. They hadn't just borrowed my points. They'd stolen them, planned it meticulously, booked months in advance, and never said a word. Not even a thank you. Not even the courtesy of asking. And the resort, my resort. The one place I'd dreamed of visiting. The reward I'd promised myself after decades of sacrifice. Max whined softly, pushing his nose against my hand, which had balled into a fist around the itinerary. I relaxed my grip and stroked his head, but my mind was elsewhere. They didn't even ask, I whispered to Max, who tilted his head as if he understood. I looked again at the itinerary. Check-in. Tomorrow, 3 p.m. I glanced at my watch. It was just past 9 p.m. now. Something inside me shifted. That sharp knot of hurt began to transform into something else entirely. Determination. I clicked on the reservation details in my account. There it was, in black and white, fully refundable up to 24 hours before check-in. My finger hovered over the cancel reservation button. One click and their perfect getaway would vanish. One click to reclaim what was rightfully mine. Max pressed closer to me, his warmth a strange comfort as I made my decision. I clicked. The confirmation screen glowed back at me. Your reservation has been successfully canceled. Your points will be credited back to your account within 24 hours. I sat motionless, laptop perched on my knees, as Max dozed at my feet. The quiet hum of my refrigerator and the dog's gentle snoring were the only sounds in the room. My fingers still hovered over the trackpad, trembling slightly. What had I done? Emily and Mark would arrive at Oceana Palms tomorrow, suitcases in hand, expecting to check into their stolen paradise. Instead, they'd be met with confusion, embarrassment, and ultimately, no reservation. For one brief moment, guilt washed over me. I had raised Emily better than this. Where had I gone wrong? When had she learned it was acceptable to take without asking, to use people to use her own mother without a second thought? Then again, how many times had she done something like this before? How many smaller betrayals had I overlooked, excused, or absorbed into that endless well of maternal forgiveness? Too many to count. I closed my eyes, memories flooding back. The borrowed clothes never returned. The money lent for emergencies that were never repaid. The countless times she dropped by with laundry when her machine was broken or asked me to watch Max for just a few hours, that turned into entire weekends. The pattern was so clear now. I had become a resource to be tapped, not a person to be respected. Max stirred at my feet, whimpering softly in his sleep. I reached down to stroke his golden fur. "At least you're honest about what you want," I whispered. My phone pinged with a notification. My travel rewards account, your points have been returned to your balance. 19,917 points available. That was fast, much faster than I expected. I stared at the number, my lifetime of careful saving restored in an instant. My dream vacation, still possible. But now, the dream felt hollow, tainted. What joy would I find in finally reaching Oceana Palms 2 years from now, knowing what had happened? Would I spend the entire time thinking about Emily and Mark's betrayal? A strange calm settled over me. I'd spent my whole life planning ahead, saving for someday, putting others first. I'd raised Emily alone, working overtime to give her everything she needed. I'd postponed my own dreams, my own needs, again and again. And how had that worked out? I looked around my modest living room, the same furniture I'd had for 15 years, the same routine day after day, the same daughter who took without asking and left without thinking. If not now, when? My laptop screen had dimmed from inactivity. I tapped the trackpad, bringing it back to life. My fingers moved almost of their own accord, navigating back to the Oceana Palms booking page. One Ocean View Suite, check-in tomorrow, 2 weeks. My heart raced as I filled in my information, selected my room preferences, and clicked Continue to Payment. The points balance appeared on the screen. 105,000 points for the room. The same room Emily and Mark had booked. I hesitated only briefly before clicking Confirm Booking. Another notification pinged. My reservation was confirmed. A suite at Oceana Palms, waiting for me tomorrow. Just me. For the first time in hours, I smiled. A real smile, not the practiced one I used when Emily made her requests or when neighbors asked how retirement was treating me. But logistics quickly intruded on my moment of triumph. I couldn't take Max with me to a 5-star resort, and I couldn't leave him alone for 2 weeks. I reached for my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found Pam, an old friend from work who had started a pet sitting business after retirement. We'd fallen out of touch lately, my fault really. I'd been so wrapped up in being available for Emily that I'd let many friendships slide. She answered on the third ring, her familiar laugh warm in my ear. "Diane? Is that really you? It's been ages." "Hi, Pam," I said, feeling a strange mix of nervousness and exhilaration. "I have an unusual favor to ask." I explained the situation, well, part of it, just that I had an unexpected opportunity for a vacation, but needed someone to watch a dog. I didn't mention that the dog belonged to my daughter who thought I would be the one watching him, or that I was taking the vacation she had stolen from me. 2 weeks starting tomorrow? That's short notice, but for you, absolutely. Bring him over whenever you're ready, Pam said, without hesitation. We've got plenty of room, and Baxter would love the company. Relief coursed through me. I'll pay your full rate, of course, I added quickly. We'll work something out, Pam assured me. It's just good to hear from you, and even better that you're finally taking some time for yourself. After we hung up, I sat in the quiet of my living room, plans forming rapidly. I needed to pack, book a car service to the airport. I'd need to use actual money for the flight, but I had savings modest but sufficient. I opened my closet and pulled out the small suitcase I'd used for the occasional weekend visits to Emily's before she and Mark had moved closer. It had been years since I'd packed for myself, for pleasure. As I carefully selected clothes for a tropical climate, I realized I wasn't angry anymore. That knot in my chest had transformed again, from hurt to determination, and now to something else entirely. Anticipation, independence, liberation. I glanced at Max, now spread out comfortably on my living room rug. I think, I told him softly, this might be the beginning of something new. The next morning arrived with surreal clarity. I woke before my alarm, a strange energy coursing through me. For a moment, I wondered if it had all been a dream. The discovery, the cancellation, the rebooking. But my small suitcase stood packed by the door, confirmation emails waited in my inbox, and Max was still curled at the foot of my bed, blissfully unaware of the upheaval around him. I moved through my morning routine with unusual efficiency. Coffee tasted sharper, colors seemed brighter. I was acutely aware of each moment passing, each minute bringing me closer to a decision I couldn't quite believe I had made. At precisely 9 a.m., I loaded Max and his belongings into my car and drove to Pam's house. Her home sat on a half-acre lot at the edge of town, a cozy bungalow with a fenced yard where 2 other dogs played. "Look at this handsome boy," Pam exclaimed as Max bounded out of the car, immediately making friends with a black Labrador. "We're going to have a wonderful time, aren't we?" I handed over Max's food, medications, and favorite toys, along with more cash than Pam had asked for. When she protested, I insisted. "You're saving me," I said simply. "It's worth every penny." She studied my face for a moment, her eyes knowing. "Whatever you're doing, Diane, I hope it brings you joy. It's been too long since I've seen you look this alive." I hugged her tightly, the first real hug I'd given or received in months. "I'll tell you everything when I get back. It's quite a story." "I'll hold you to that," she said with a wink. The ride to the airport felt like floating. I'd splurged on a car service, another first, and found myself chatting easily with the driver about nothing in particular. The weight of responsibility of always being available had lifted so completely that I felt almost weightless. Check-in, security, boarding, each step should have been stressful, but I moved through the airport with a strange serenity. I had nowhere to be but where I was going. No one needed anything from me. For the first time in decades, my time belonged only to me. The flight attendant in first class, yes, I'd upgraded, using a chunk of my carefully guarded savings, offered me champagne before takeoff. "Celebrating something special?" she asked, as she handed me the flute. I considered her question carefully. "My independence," I finally answered. She smiled, touched her hand briefly to my shoulder. "The best thing to celebrate." 4 hours later, a taxi deposited me at the entrance to Oceana Palms. The resort was even more beautiful than the pictures, a sprawling white structure with elegant archways and cascading bougainvillea, all framed against the impossible blue of the ocean beyond. "Welcome to Oceana Palms, Ms. Walker," the receptionist greeted me, her smile warm and genuine. "We're delighted to have you with us." I waited for guilt or doubt to surface as I signed the check-in forms. Neither came. Instead, a surreal calm had settled over me, as if I were watching myself from a slight distance. "Your ocean view suite is ready," she continued, handing me a key card in a linen folder. "Ricardo will escort you and help with your luggage." Ricardo, a young man with an easy smile, led me through lush gardens to an elevator that whisked us to the 4th floor. He chatted amiably about the resort's amenities, the 3 pools, the spa services, the renowned chef who had recently joined their restaurant. When he opened the door to my suite, I had to stifle a gasp. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed the vast expanse of turquoise ocean. A king-sized bed with crisp white linens dominated one side of the room, while a sitting area with elegant furnishings occupied the other. On the coffee table sat a bottle of champagne in an ice bucket and a plate of chocolate-covered strawberries. "The balcony is through here," Ricardo said, sliding open a glass door to reveal a private terrace with 2 loungers and a small table. "Perfect for watching the sunset." After he left, I stood motionless in the center of the room, absorbing every detail. The scent of fresh flowers from a small arrangement on the desk. The sound of waves crashing below. The feel of plush carpet beneath my feet. My phone buzzed in my purse. Emily's ringtone. I silenced it without looking. Instead, I opened the champagne with a satisfying pop and poured myself a glass. With drink in hand, I stepped onto the balcony, the ocean breeze immediately lifting my hair. I lifted my glass toward the horizon, where the sun was beginning its slow descent. "To me," I whispered. "Just..." I took a sip, the bubbles dancing on my tongue. Below, palm trees swayed in the gentle wind, and the rhythmic sound of waves provided a soothing soundtrack. I closed my eyes and let the moment wash over me. When I opened them again, I caught my reflection in the glass balcony door. A woman I barely recognized, shoulders relaxed, face open, a slight smile playing at the corners of her mouth. She looked younger somehow, unburdened. Was this what freedom felt like? I spent that first evening exploring the resort grounds, marveling at the infinity pool that seemed to spill directly into the ocean, discovering hidden garden nooks with comfortable seating, familiarizing myself with the path to the beach. I dined alone at the resort's casual beachfront restaurant, savoring each bite of fresh seafood without having to consider anyone else's preferences or engage in obligatory conversation. Back in my suite, I ran a bath in the enormous soaking tub, adding the complimentary bath salts that smelled of jasmine and vanilla. As I sank into the warm water, I realized something astonishing. I wasn't angry. I wasn't sad. For the first time in years, I wasn't weighed down by resentment or obligation. I felt decades of self-sacrifice lift off my shoulders, dissolving into the fragrant water around me. I wasn't just escaping, I was reclaiming something essential that had been lost along the way. Myself. By the 3rd day of my stay at Oceana Palms, I had established a pleasant routine. Mornings began with sunrise yoga on the beach, followed by a leisurely breakfast on my private balcony. Afternoons were spent reading by the adults-only infinity pool or walking along the shoreline, collecting shells that caught my eye. Evenings brought sunset cocktails and dinners where I savored each bite without rush or interruption. I had just returned from a guided snorkeling excursion. Another first for me, when I noticed my phone blinking with notifications. 12 missed calls, 7 voicemails, 23 text messages, all from Emily and Mark. For a moment, I considered ignoring them entirely. I was halfway through my vacation, feeling more relaxed than I had in decades. Did I really want to invite their drama into this peaceful sanctuary I'd created? But curiosity won out. I sat on the edge of my king-sized bed, hair still damp from the ocean, and pressed play on the first voicemail from yesterday. "Mom, it's Emily. Call me back as soon as you get this. There's some issue with the resort booking. They're saying there's no reservation under our name." Her voice was controlled but tinged with annoyance. I moved to the next message, left 3 hours later. "Mom, seriously, where are you? We've been trying to reach you all day. The resort says the reservation was canceled. We're stuck in the lobby trying to figure this out. Please call me back." The third message revealed the first cracks in her composure. "Mom, this is ridiculous. We've checked your account and all the points are gone. The resort says someone else booked our room right after our reservation was canceled. What's going on? Call me back right now." With each subsequent message, Emily's voice grew more desperate, shifting from annoyed to frantic to tearful. The final voicemail, left just an hour ago, was from Mark. His normally smooth tone was replaced by barely contained anger. "Diane, we know what you did. We're not stupid. Emily is devastated. We've had to get a room at some 2-star motel 20 miles from the beach because everything decent is booked solid. You've ruined our vacation. Emily won't stop crying. Is this really how you want to treat your own daughter? Call us back. Now." I set the phone down, a strange mixture of emotions swirling within me. A twinge of guilt. Yes, I wasn't made of stone. but also something unexpected: relief. Relief that the truth was finally out in the open. Relief that for once I had stood up for myself, even if it wasn't in the most direct way. The text messages told a similar story, starting with confusion, progressing to demanding questions, and finally descending into guilt-tripping pleas and accusations. "Mom, what did you do with the points? We know you're ignoring us. We had to put the motel on our emergency credit card. It's disgusting here. How could you do this to your own daughter? Is this about Christmas? Because if you're still upset about us not visiting, that's really petty." Mark had to take 2 Xanax. His blood pressure is through the roof. "Mom, please, we're desperate here." The last text, sent just minutes ago, struck a different tone. "We're coming over to your house. This has gone on long enough." I almost laughed at that. Let them go to my empty house. Let them stand on my porch, ringing a doorbell. No one would answer. Let them finally feel what it was like to be ignored, to be an afterthought. My phone rang again, Emily's ringtone. I watched it vibrate across the bedside table, leaving a trail in the condensation from my water glass. On impulse, I answered. "Hello, Emily," I said, my voice calmer than I expected. "Mom, finally. Where have you been? We've been trying to reach you for days. There's been a huge problem with the resort." "I know," I interrupted quietly. A beat of silence followed. "What do you mean? You know?" "I mean, I know about the reservation being canceled. I know about the points." Another pause, longer this time. "Mom, what did you do?" Her voice had dropped to a whisper. "The same thing you did, sweetheart. I booked myself a vacation." "You? What?" The confusion in her voice was almost comical. "I'm at Oceana Palms right now, in the Ocean View Suite. It's even more beautiful than I imagined all these years while I was saving those points." But those were our points," Emily sputtered. I felt a surge of something like pity for her. She actually believed it. "No, Emily, they were my points. Points I earned and saved for almost a decade. Points you took without asking. We didn't. Please don't lie to me. Not anymore." My voice remained steady, but I could feel a lifetime of unspoken truths rising to the surface. I found the itinerary in Max's bag. I checked my account. I saw everything. The silence on the other end stretched so long, I wondered if she'd hung up. "Where's Max?" she finally asked, her voice small. "With Pam Jenkins. You remember her from my office. She runs a pet sitting service now. He's perfectly fine." "I can't believe you would do this," Emily said, anger returning to her voice. "This is so selfish, Mom. So incredibly selfish." I closed my eyes, absorbing the irony of her words. When I opened them again, my gaze fell on the balcony where the afternoon sun was casting golden light across the terrace. "I have a massage scheduled in 20 minutes, I said softly. "We can talk more when I get back. Don't you dare hang up on me." But I already had. I placed the phone on silent and slipped it into the safe in the closet. Then I changed into the plush resort robe, stepped into the sandals provided by housekeeping, and made my way to the spa. As the elevator descended, I realized I was smiling. Not out of malice or revenge, but from a profound sense of reclaiming my own worth. For the first time in my life, I had put myself first, and despite the guilt, despite the confrontation to come, it felt absolutely right. 2 weeks passed like a beautiful dream. After that phone call with Emily, I had expected guilt to cloud my remaining days at Oceana Palms. Instead, I found myself sinking deeper into relaxation, savoring every moment with an appreciation I'd nearly forgotten I was capable of feeling. I swam in the warm ocean waters each morning. I took a pottery class and created a lopsided but cherished bowl. I made friends with an older couple from Seattle who invited me to join them for dinner. I learned to salsa dance under the stars, laughing at my missteps with strangers who quickly became companions. I spoke to no one about my daughter, my life back home, or the circumstances that had brought me there. For those 2 weeks, I was simply Diane, not mom, not grandma, to a dog, not the reliable backup plan. When the final day arrived, I packed my suitcase with a strange mix of contentment and resolve. My skin was sun-kissed, my shoulders relaxed, and somewhere inside me, a strength had solidified, one I hadn't known I possessed until I had exercised it. The flight home was uneventful. I had silenced Emily's subsequent calls, responding only with brief texts assuring her that Max was fine and that we would talk when I returned. She had alternated between cold fury and desperate pleading, but I had held firm in my boundary. Pam greeted me with a hug when I arrived to pick up Max, who bounded toward me with unrestrained joy, his tail wagging so hard his entire body shook. "He was an absolute dream," Pam said, scratching behind his ears. "Though I suspect you had a more interesting 2 weeks than he did." I smiled, feeling the weight of reality settling back onto my shoulders, though not as heavily as before. "I have so much to tell you. Coffee next week? I'll hold you to that," she said with a knowing wink. I had barely been home an hour, just enough time to unpack my suitcase and start a load of laundry when the doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I could see Emily standing on my porch, arms crossed tightly over her chest. No Mark in sight. I opened the door, and Max immediately rushed forward to greet her, tail wagging ecstatically. She bent down to pet him briefly, but kept her eyes fixed on me. "You're back," she said flatly. "Yes," I replied, stepping aside to let her in. "Just got home a little while ago." She walked past me into the living room, her posture rigid with tension. I noticed dark circles under her eyes and a certain dishevelment to her appearance that was unlike her usual polished self. "Would you like some tea?" I offered, closing the door behind her. "I don't want tea, Mom. I want an explanation." Her voice cracked slightly. "How could you do that to us? Do you have any idea what you put us through?" I settled into my favorite armchair while she remained standing, too agitated to sit. "I found the itinerary in Max's bag," I said simply. "I checked my account and discovered you had used all my points without asking. Points I'd been saving for years for my own trip to that very resort." "You could have just talked to me about it," she exclaimed. "Like you talked to me before taking my points," I countered, keeping my voice even. "Like you talked to me before booking a luxury vacation in my name?" She flushed, looking away. "We were going to tell you eventually. The timing wasn't right." "The timing wasn't right for 2 months while you planned this? Or it wasn't right when you dropped off Max and asked me to dog sit while you enjoyed a vacation you'd stolen from me?" "Stolen is a harsh word," she muttered, "but accurate." Max sensed the tension and came to rest his head on my knee. I stroked him absently, drawing strength from his warm presence. "We had a terrible vacation because of you," Emily said, eyes glistening with tears. "We ended up in this awful motel miles from the beach. Mark got food poisoning from some sketchy takeout place. It was a disaster." For a moment, my maternal instinct to comfort her almost won out. Almost. But then I remembered the feeling of standing on my balcony at Oceana Palms, toasting to my own worth. "I'm sorry you had a bad experience," I said. "That wasn't my intention." "Then what was your intention? Revenge?" I shook my head. "To finally do something for myself. To stop being the person everyone takes for granted." She looked stricken. "Is that how you see yourself? As taken for granted?" "It's how I've been treated," I said softly. "Not just with the points, Emily. For years." A heavy silence fell between us. Max padded over to Emily and nudged her hand, perhaps offering comfort in his canine way. "I don't know how to fix this," she finally said, her voice small. I reached for my purse on the side table and pulled out a brochure I'd picked up at the airport. Travel rewards program similar to mine. "Here," I said, extending it toward her. "Next time, you can earn your own trip." She took it hesitantly, staring at the glossy cover. "And Max is welcome to visit any time," I added. "But I'm not your default dog sitter anymore, or your default anything. From now on, you ask, properly, with notice. And if I do," her voice was barely audible, "then I'll consider it, just like anyone else would. Sometimes I'll say yes, sometimes I'll say no." She nodded slowly, the reality of our new dynamic sinking in. "Are you still mad at me?" I considered this carefully. "No," I said finally. "I'm just different now." And I was. The woman who had returned was not the same one who had left 2 weeks ago. I had reclaimed something essential during my time away. Not just my vacation or my points, but my sense of self-worth. As Emily left, promising to call in a few days when things had settled, I stood in my doorway watching her drive away. For the first time, I didn't feel the familiar pang of wondering when I'd see her again or if she was upset with me. I was no longer the mom who stayed behind, Always waiting, always available, always putting herself last. I was the woman who had finally gone forward. And there was no going back.